Hello, and welcome back to Patrick Replies, the show where I, Patrick, reply to your questions and your comments about the latest video, and today we are talking about Mario and Adaptations, and as some of you noticed, I changed the title and thumbnail to this video like 3 times, and I keep doing that this season. I keep feeling like I'm not quite getting it right. Actually, one thing I'm just going to put out here right now, if anyone is like a talented thumbnail designer, I would love to hire someone to design my thumbnails because it stresses me out so much. Graphic design is not my forte, but I'm forced to do a bunch of it because I do this for a living, and I would love it if someone who was good at this could just take care of that. Anyway, if it's easy to find my email or whatever. Let me know if that's a thing you'd be interested in doing. Anyway, but today we are talking about Mario, and we're talking about adaptations. And look, I think I know how this episode is going to go because, you know, like the big topic for this video was about adaptations in general, the idea of adaptation, translating a story from one medium to another, and that is an enormous topic. As we brought up in the video, there is an entire academic field of study devoted to just that, which is why, to make it manageable to cover in one video, I focused things on specifically the 2 Super Mario Brothers adaptations. And look, I wrote a lot of stuff, like I think a couple thousand words that I cut out and did not film that was just about other adaptations because it's very easy to just shoot off into massive tangents and talk about way too much stuff. And so what I think is going to happen is that we're gonna get a lot of comments here that are very long, like essay-like comments that are asking really big, far-reaching questions about the nature of adaptations, about other adaptations I didn't talk about video games, all these things. And look, because I am only human, and you know, I cannot devote my entire day to this, I really do not want to release a 2-hour Patrick Replies video. I am probably gonna give some short answers to questions. I will not give a giant, exhaustive 5 to 10 minute response to every single one because, you know, look, the Patrick Replies videos, I think they're fun. I think people enjoy watching them. I don't really get paid for them, so there's only so much time I can devote to these. Also, I finished the main video, and so theoretically I should be done, talking about this topic by now. But anyway, let's get to it. As always, we're gonna begin with the comments that our own Emma Logsdon pulled from the YouTube comments section, and so we'll see what's in there. We'll see what Emma picked. Hey, Porco Rosso. I bet it's the actual guy. Hi, Emma and Patrick. I needed more Mario voice from Patrick. Please do the entire Patrick Replies video in the Mario voice. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm replying to the. This is bad already. Yeah, I'm replying to the comments. I love the commenter. Wahoo. You know, okay, I'm sorry about that. That felt stupid. Also, a thing I'm realizing is that, you know, I think there's a reason that Mario only speaks in short little fragments like, "It's-a me," and "Wahoo," and "Let's go," because, you know, with that voice, you can't do full paragraphs of text. That gets old real fast. I need like at least 4 or 5 of these if I'm gonna, you know, do the Mario voice for even a full minute. So sorry, Porco Rosso, but you know, there you go. Okay, so let's go on. Andy Camp says the characters are at best one-dimensional. They are at least 2-dimensional, and in later versions, 3-dimensional. In Paper Mario, they are both. There are 2 ways to interpret this comment, and I'm not sure which one is intended. This could be just a joke about, graphical dimensions, as in, like, there were 2D games where the characters were 2D, and then in later games on later consoles, they were 3D. And yeah, in Paper Mario does have, like, a 2D, 3D thing. I think that's what he meant. I hope that is what Andy Camp meant, and that this was a joke about video game graphics. Because if someone's really trying to argue that Mario is a complex three-dimensional character, that I would encourage that person to read a book or watch a movie or just consume more media. That is a little more challenging. But anyway, I'm going to give Andy the benefit of the doubt and say that he's just making a joke. Moving on. Hubris. Okay? I thought I was the only person who ever saw or remembered the movie Locke until today. Well, Hubris, clearly you do not watch this channel because Locke has been coming up in these videos for years. Callum Lyall. One thing that is worth mentioning is that Detective Pikachu chose an obscure narrative-driven game to adapt. If they had taken the same path with Mario, it would have been one of the RPG games, or perhaps Luigi's Mansion, which I think would be a better narrative. Luigi has the character/humanity/flaws that Mario lacks. Yes, I would agree. Especially for a movie, Detective Pikachu, which is not a game that I've played, but I've read the plot summary of it. You know, it's a pretty straightforward, linear mystery. It lends itself a lot more to a film adaptation than the traditional Pokemon narrative, which is, kind of needs to be like a TV show that runs for like 25 years. But yeah, as far as Mario goes, like, Luigi's Mansion makes so much more sense. It is about, like, I mean, the premise is what? Like a guy who is scared has to bust ghosts in a mansion. Already that is much more interesting than the Mario premise of a plumber hops on things, to rescue a princess from a big turtle man. Yeah. Again, I'd rather see a Luigi's Mansion movie. And look, here's the thing. As far as the casting goes, Charlie Day, good casting as Luigi. Forbidden War says, there are many this is quoting the video. There are many books based on the subject, but strangely, no movies based on those books. Nicolas Cage's 2002 adaptation is sitting right there. I don't really understand this comment, and I feel like this comment, it's like misunderstanding what I was saying in the video. So the line that they're quoting, there are many books based on the subject, but strangely no movies based on those books, is me talking about, like, academic textbooks about adaptation studies. That's what I'm talking about. There are not films based on those academic textbooks. The 2002 Nicolas Cage movie, Adaptation, which I did rewatch while I was working on this video. I didn't, it didn't really factor into it, but I did feel like rewatching it, and it's great. Really great movie. But that movie is an adaptation of the nonfiction Susan Orlean book, The Orchid Thief, which is not a book about adaptation studies, and so I'm not sure what Forbidden War is talking about. Anyway, moving on. The Leftist Owl. Another point about Akira. The movie was made while the manga was still in production, and the ending of the movie informed a lot of how the author wanted to shape the manga. It's an adaptation that shaped its source material. Yes, that is true. I mean, I had to stop myself from going on a big tangent about Akira. Specifically, the two things that I wanted to go on a big tangent about, that I have even considered just doing like separate videos about, are Akira and LA Confidential, in terms of really interesting adaptations. And yeah, with Akira, because I think Otomo worked on the manga for like 8 years, and it was coming out like in issues. It was serialized, and then the movie came out. I think he was working on that from like around the midpoint of the comic. But yeah, and it was one guy kind of running both projects. It's really, really interesting, and Akira is great in both forms. I really love it, and yeah, I just didn't go into more detail because if I followed every tangent about adaptations, then that video would have been 24 hours long, and it would have killed me. But if you've only watched Akira, you should read Akira, because, like, half the story is not in the movie. Luke Muscat says, great video, Patrick and team. I was the designer/creator of Fruit Ninja. Wow. That's cool, which obviously had absolutely zero story or character development. After the huge success of the game, and as I was leaving the project, a push started to get film and TV adaptations made. For some at the studio, getting an adaptation made the whole thing more legitimate, like the property had made it. Games were still struggling to be taken seriously despite being such a huge global business, but film and TV didn't have that problem. But given how narratively thin the source material was, new characters and stories started getting added into the game specifically to support those future jumps to film and TV, and merch, I guess. This was very divisive. It was like having to adapt a film into an existing game, except the film didn't exist yet. It was a time. This is fascinating. Wow, I did not know this. Did a Fruit Ninja like movie or TV show ever get made? I should look this up now. Like, I don't recall one, but you never know. Okay, IMDb. Oh yeah, 2016 to 17. There were 13 episodes produced of for YouTube Red, a Fruit Ninja animated show. Wow. Well, anyway, that's weird. I mean, look, I'm not surprised by any of this because, it was like the 2010s. It's the era in Hollywood where any remotely popular intellectual property is going to be optioned to be developed into a movie or TV show. That's just how things go. And yeah, even Fruit Ninja, a game that has zero narrative at all. The thing that I think is just dumb about this is the idea that they were adding characters and story to the game to give them stuff to adapt, when really this seems kind of like I'm not saying this needs to be adapted into film and TV, but it's such a simple premise with such a simple visual. It's like, the hand holding the katana slicing fruit, and it's a perfect blank slate for if you're going to adapt it. It's like, look, all you do is keep that idea and that visual, and then run with it and do whatever you want with the movie or TV show. You don't need to do anything to the source material, just as long as they keep that core premise. You can do a lot. What a weird backwards way to do it. Anyway, Luke, thank you for commenting. And this is, I would love to hear more about that experience because it sounds very strange. K. Ray Ray, I apologize for mispronouncing this name. Hi, Patrick. As one of those vicious academics in adaptation studies, I happily welcome this venture into our field. This is great to hear. I was really expecting, those adaptation studies scholars to find me and destroy me for everything I got wrong. One of my frustrations with the field is that most of the core literature is written by literature experts that wanted to do something with film, and it often shows a severe deficiency in filmmaking language. So it's nice to see it approached by someone with a more film-focused background. Thank you. That is really nice to hear. And yeah, I did notice that while working my way through the research and the various books and essays that Raven, our researcher, collected for this, that it really does all, not all, but largely seem to be written by people who are coming from the background of studying literature, English, that kind of thing, and then then stepping into writing about film, and that is usually not their strength, and it shows. And so, I can see how that's a little frustrating because, especially when adapting a book to film, there's so many interesting angles to it, especially how they will find visual ways to represent the subtext or stuff that's in the descriptions, or internal narration and stuff like that. There's a lot to write about. But the thing is, making this video, it really does make me realize that if I want to, there are so many more videos that I could make just about different types of adaptations, different instances of adaptations. Again, the Akira one that I already mentioned, LA Confidential is one that I would also love to do. I read the book a couple of years ago and then rewatched the movie, and I love them both. And that's just such an interesting case because the movie discards like half the book. Like just like huge, like major passages, like major characters, so many subplots. And then you watch the movie and it's like, it really is like, it's still so satisfying despite everything that you lose. And I would love to kind of study like how they pulled that off. Anyway, moving on. Jacob Height says, very recently, Denis Villeneuve said that adaptation is, quote, an inherently violent process, which really captured this issue perfectly to me. It's so easy as fans to be so angry about bits of unfaithfulness, but going to a different medium means a whole new set of strengths and weaknesses. Truly faithful adaptations usually suck. I wish that I had seen that quote before I made this video, because the adaptation is an inherently violent process is such a good line and also so true. Yeah, it's always going to be like a weird struggle to like take one thing and kind of like, you know, it's basically like forcing a square peg into a round hole. Yeah, Joe You Chill says, my favorite experience watching an adaptation was Jupiter Ascending, which is not an adaptation. But I was so confident in the theater that it had to be someone trying to capture the immense scope and all their favorite moments from a decade-long comic book, and that all these grandiose nothing scenes had been iconic parts of another work. And then it was none of those things. That is a really good point, and this is something that I've thought about before with Jupiter Ascending specifically. Like, Jupiter Ascending, you know, in an original film written and directed by the Wachowskis, it really, to me, feels like an adaptation of some kind of like YA fantasy sci-fi series that would have come out around the time of like Divergent or like Mortal Instruments or you know, one of those other series that were like being adapted. You know, it's about like this normal, relatable girl who thinks she's really not special, who has this kind of shitty life, and then turns out she's actually intergalactic royalty. She goes off into space, meets all these colorful characters. There's a lot of like soap opera-y drama. She falls in love with this hot dog man, and there's so much stuff there that they could, you know, develop into sequels, and that story could continue for like 5 books or whatever. But no, it's just an original one. So that said, I mean, look, Jupiter Ascending, not my favorite Wachowski film by any means. I'm kind of mixed on it, but I would watch a sequel in a heartbeat. Hopefully Eddie Redmayne would come back, because that is the best performance he's ever given. Hugh Hogan says, bro got the shiniest head. Thanks, Hugh Hogan. That's so nice of you. See, what I love about YouTube comments is that what people will often do is just like look at a thing and just like notice a thing and just like type the thing they are observing at the time. That, you know, nothing to say. They just type the thing that they see. And look, the thing about this is about my head in the videos is that no, I do not have a notably shiny head. When I just walk around, my head is not like, you know, like refracting a ton of light. I am pretty pale, but like there isn't a ton of shine from it. No, you see, that happens because we have a light rigged up that blasts a very hard light at the back of my head to create this rim, this hard edge light, because I just like, I like the way that looks aesthetically. I just like, you know, a really hard edge light. That's kind of like glowing. That's why I put the Promist filter on the lens, to make it bloom a little bit more. Just a thing that I like. Comments are weird. Wild Ice says, funny that you mention Edge of Tomorrow when it's one of the first movies based on a manga/light novel that broke that adaptation curse. I will have to take your word for it, because I have not read All You Need Is Kill, the light novel, I believe then turned into a manga that Edge of Tomorrow is adapted from. And I have not watched a ton of live-action movies adapted from Japanese light novels or manga. Or have I, and I just don't realize it. I don't know. I'm really not. I didn't know this was a curse. So tell me in the comments what other examples of, of failed adaptations here there were before. But Edge of Tomorrow, terrific movie, and I was happy to get an excuse to talk about it, even if just for like 30 seconds. CBPD says, I just gotta say this because I find it fascinating. I work at a rec center daycare a few hours a week. Anytime the kids are restless and getting a bit rowdy, we turn on the Mario movie. It is the only movie that hypnotizes preschoolers and toddlers for more than 30 minutes. I am not sure what it is about that movie, but they all watch it spellbound. Do I think it's a good movie? Not particularly. I've gotten really good at tuning it out, but I will always appreciate the magical power it has to distract sad children till their parents finish their workout. The only thing that comes even close to its mystic power is Paw Patrol. Well, hey, there is a positive comment about the Mario movie. To be clear, I don't hate the Mario movie. I think it's like, the thing is, and I think part of what kids may like about it, is that I think it's visually pleasing. It uses all of the basic designs from the Mario games, which are already nice designs. The animation is pretty good. And look, part of the reason that people have always loved Mario games is it's kind of nice to like watch this little red and blue guy hop around through these fun landscapes. And yeah, the movie moves quickly. There's a lot going on visually. There's a lot of forward momentum, like the games. And so hey, there you go. I'm glad the movie has a purpose. Scott Hazelwood, student of comm, says, great video as always. Thank you. First time commenting on a video, maybe I'll make the replies video. Here you are. Curious how you feel about adaptations having an effect on the originally adapted material. The main example would be the ways Marvel has brought some elements and some characters into the comics in an apparent attempt to make the comics look a little more like the MCU movies. Much of it has been adjusting character designs, but they have also brought in some characters like Darcy and Agent Coulson. Is that something you've noticed, and do you have any thoughts? Yes, it is definitely something that I've noticed. I mean, it's really been happening for quite a while. Like going back, I mean, Blade's whole design in the comics now for like 20 plus years is largely based on the Wesley Snipes design. But like, in 2001, when they did the X-Men relaunch with Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, they put them in black leather. To reflect what the movie had done the year before. There was a period, I think also around then, like maybe like 2003. Was it in the Paul Jenkins, Humberto Ramos series? Spider-Man got organic web shooters for a time because they did that in the Raimi movie. So there's stuff like that. Bullseye got a bullseye tattoo on his forehead, like Colin Farrell in the Daredevil movie. So there's stuff like that. But yeah, in general, like they'll do things like, like when the Avengers movie came out and they're like, oh, we're gonna change the lineup of the current Avengers team so it's the same characters from the movie. The reason they do this kind of thing is, and I understand the logic, is that millions of people go see these movies. They reach a way, way, way wider audience than the comics ever do. And there is the hope that some of those millions and millions of viewers might decide, hey, I liked that movie. I'm gonna pick up one of the comics that it's based on. And so they wanna make the comics accessible for these new readers and have the comics, look like the movie that they just saw. And so, for some like little cosmetic adjustments, like costumes or whatever, I'm like, fine, I don't mind that. And look, as far as like bringing over characters created in the movies, I will say I have no opinions on. I've read very few comics with like Agent Coulson or Darcy in them, so I don't even have an opinion on, how they are in the comics. But look, I mean, like Harley Quinn was created for the animated series in the 90s and then brought over to the comics, and that worked out. I will say, in general, my feelings about this are kind of like best captured by something that Jonathan Hickman said in an interview, I think in 2019, when he was like revamping the X-Men comics, and he was like, the comics should not reflect like what the movies are doing, because then they will only ever be able to give like a watered down version of the experience people had watching the movies. Because I mean, he didn't say this part, but I'm like, look, a giant blockbuster movie is just inherently gonna be like a more spectacular, visceral experience than reading a comic book and just seeing still images on a page. And so if you're trying to recreate the experience of that movie, but just on a comic book page, it's not going to live up to it. It's just going to be like a lesser version of that. And so what Hickman says is that in the comics, they should be trying to do the stuff that the movies could never do. They should be way more ambitious. They should go crazier with the ideas, with the visuals, with the stories, and they should be going out ahead. And so the movies will be trying to catch up with them and trying to reach for what they're doing. And I think that's what he did, especially with House of X, Powers of 10, when he revamped the X-Men. And you look at that and it's like, yeah, I don't know how they would do this in a movie. This is like way too wild. And so that's how I feel about it. Like, I think the comics should not be too concerned with what the movies are doing. I do think that when some big movie based on a Marvel or DC superhero comes out, the companies should, and I think James Gunn is like, doing a good job working with DC about this, but they really should do a better job at having clear entry points for the movie viewers who want to read the comics, in terms of like, this is the one that you pick up. This is your entry point. Start here, then go to this, because often it's very confusing. Often people will go into a Barnes & Noble and see a table of like Black Panther stuff, and it's like, I don't know, there's like 20 Black Panther comics here. I have no idea which one to start with or like how they connect to anything else. And so, yeah, comics, they never make it easy. Iterenzi says, great video, but I think you may have simplified the experience of playing a game a little too much and not taken into account all the wonder and fantasy that happens in a player's mind, even when the game isn't explicitly a narrative-driven game. A game like Mario evokes curiosity and wonder in a player's mind, especially a young one, through design, art, sound, etc. There's always a story that the player imagines with the little pieces a game gives, and the effect of that fantasy can be very powerful and enjoyable. I feel like if a movie adaptation achieves the same effect of making the viewer wonder and fill the blank spaces with imagination, it deserves some extra credits as an adaptation of a game. So this is interesting, and I will concede immediately that, yeah, I'm pretty sure I did simplify the experience of playing a game a little bit too much. But I think with the example of Mario, as far as the wonder and fantasy that it evokes and kind of creates in our minds when we're playing it, is not usually so much narrative. It's not usually like, ooh, I wonder what the backstory of this guy is. I don't think it's so much that. I think a lot of it is just the discovery of like the new levels and the new worlds, and like as you go forward, just like seeing these spectacular new visuals and just being kind of delighted at like, oh, look what I'm discovering. And I think a lot of that comes from just having the control over it, of you being the one going forward and seeing this stuff. And this is the sort of thing that I think the Mario movie doesn't do especially well, because, the fun in Mario is like going to the new levels and the new worlds and seeing what each new one is like. And in the Mario movie, when like Mario and Peach go on like the journey to reach the Kong Kingdom or whatever, there's really just like a montage where it's like, oh, and they go through a few different lands and then they're there. And I don't think just a montage with like a handful of shots of different landscapes, it really does evoke that feeling of discovery and wonder. And so, yeah, I mean, really, this just gets back to my general take that a Mario movie is kind of pointless. But hey, apparently toddlers are enraptured by it. So what do I know? Samson Telbate says, is Nebula still doing lifetime memberships? If so, I know what I'm getting myself for my birthday this year. Yes. lifetime memberships are back. And again, I've said this before and I want to be very clear about it. Nebula lifetime memberships are not actually the best bang for your buck as far as signing up goes. The annual plan using like my code is actually the best deal. The thing about lifetime memberships is it's really, there's two things about it. One, it's nice to sign up for a thing and then never, ever, ever have to pay for it again, to just like have it for your entire life. That's cool. But two, the lifetime memberships, like the money that comes in from those goes directly into funding Nebula original projects, such as my upcoming movie, The Dinner Plan. And so, yeah, if you like what we're doing and like want to support my movie and, help us get, a larger budget, then that will go into that. But, no pressure at all. It's like, they're not cheap. And so that's really only if you've got totally disposable income and you're like, yeah, I'll just put it toward this cause. But, if you're into Nebula at all, I would just say the annual plan using my code, the best deal. I highly recommend it. Blacked Out Reviews says, question for Patrick Replies. I've been watching you for years and enjoy your takes on media ever since the Robin Hood video. Ooh, thank you. That's great to hear. I loved the Robin Hood video, especially last year being my favorite videos. Also, thank you. I think last year was our best collection of videos. I love your Rock and Ryan Reynolds video. My question is, how would you compare the live-action Sonic movies to 2023's Mario movie in terms of its quality between the movies? And if the Sonic movie is better for doing its own thing, or if it would be better for going the Mario 2023 route. Thank you for the content and the whole crew for making this, especially Emma and Nobbles. Great Emma and Nobbles shout out. So this is where I must admit that I have not seen either Sonic the Hedgehog movie. This is where the audience all gasps. So look, I loved the Sonic cartoon. Well, really the two Sonic cartoons, but I kind of preferred like the more sci-fi one when I was 6 years old. When I was a kid, I did not own a Sega Genesis, but I played Sonic sometimes at like friends' houses, and I thought it was pretty fun. But I do not have any great emotional attachment to Sonic, and I know plenty of people who went to see the Sonic movies, and usually the highest praise I have heard for either of them is that it was pretty fun. Which, it does not get me rushing out to the theater because there's a lot of movies and I'm an adult and Sonic looks like, I don't know, fine entertainment for children, I guess. James Marsden has like a CGI animal friend. The only thing that really interested me about them is just Jim Carrey getting to like do his kind of 90s Jim Carrey thing, but I can watch YouTube clips of that. So yeah, no, I have not seen the Sonic movies. I do not plan on watching the Knuckles TV show. Aren't they making that? Oh, I mean, they did just cast Keanu Reeves as Shadow the Hedgehog. And I do love Keanu, but also I haven't seen the DC Super Pets movie, and Keanu is Batman in that. So yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say about the Sonic movies that I have not watched. I do think they seem like inherently more interesting adaptations than the Mario movie because they basically take the characters but put them in a new story that they have made for the movie instead of just, basically kind of doing the game. And I know people are going to be like, but the Mario movie does add elements that are not in the game, like he's in Brooklyn and stuff like that. But you know what I mean. Yeah, sorry. I really have no opinion on this. Haven't seen the Sonic movies, not planning on it. Derpy Kirby says, hey Patrick, please talk about Metal Gear Solid in your video about cinematic video games. Also, feel free to gush about the series in your Patrick Replies for this video. This is your excuse to. Okay, so I love Metal Gear Solid. If you want to hear me talk a lot more about Metal Gear Solid, a few months ago, I was on the podcast Something Rotten discussing Metal Gear Solid 2, a game that I have loved for many, many years. Back when I played video games, Metal Gear was my favorite franchise, and I never played Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, because that came out after I basically stopped playing video games. I'll always wonder what that game is like, and I'll always be like, why did they drop David Hayter and cast Kiefer Sutherland? It makes no sense. Continuity, guys. But look, Metal Gear, it's like, what's so much fun is that, you have all of these movie influences, and it is very cinematic in a lot of ways. Especially if you look at Twin Snakes, the GameCube remake of the first game, where it gets really anime in the cutscenes and the action is so over the top. But also Hideo Kojima just has so many wacky things that he's obsessed with. The games are cinematic in a lot of ways, but they make no sense as movies because they need the space of a game to fit in all the weird tangents and everything that he wants to talk about, all the discussions about nanomachines, all the surreal things that happen in in Metal Gear Solid 2, and then just the gameplay, just sitting there getting so stressed out about how the fuck do I get through this room without being spotted? Because my thing with Metal Gear was always look, I don't really want to be seen at all. If I get spotted and they set off an alert and then I just have to kill some guys, I feel like I failed. No, let me hide in a locker for 15 minutes while they exit the room. I love Metal Gear. I love Solid Snake and all those wacky guys. Psycho Mantis, Fat Man, Vamp. They're great. They're great. Is 3 the best one? Maybe. I think 2 is the one I have the most attachment to, because it was the first one I played in full. But 3 might be the best. They're great. They're so good. David says, I wonder what you think about The Last of Us TV series as an adaptation of the video game. It's not a movie, but the game itself was pretty strong on the narrative aspect. What is it about The Last of Us that actually allowed it to translate so well to TV? So here's a more embarrassing confession. I have not actually watched The Last of Us or played the video game. Here's why right now. Because back when I played video games, to be clear, I stopped playing video games around 2012. But I loved Naughty Dog games. I loved Crash Bandicoot. I loved Jak and Daxter. I loved the first 3 Uncharted games, and I was sure that I would probably love The Last of Us too, but I just had kind of stopped playing video games and just never got around to it. And then the show came out, Craig Mazin's doing it. I loved Chernobyl, but I'm I want to play the game first. And I still plan on playing the games. I know they're not especially long as far as games go. And this is honestly part of why I kind of want to do a video about cinematic video games, so I have an excuse to play those games, because it's for work now, and then I'll watch the show. I will say, just based on what I know about it, because it was such a part of just the cultural discourse, that I'm aware of a lot of things about The Last of Us, but because it's obviously like Naughty Dog games, like the Uncharted games, it is obviously very narrative driven. But I think it's very relevant that it was adapted to TV and not a movie. Because with an episodic narrative medium like television, you can do things like, for instance, that one episode that, got so much attention, the one with Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. With TV, you can just kind of go on a little 45-minute detour and just tell the story of these side characters in a way that you wouldn't really be able to in a game. In a game, you might meet them, and maybe there's a cut scene where they kind of quickly summarize their backstory, but television can just kind of pause and take time and tell different kinds of stories and kind of really build out this world in a way that games usually would not. So really, it does kind of make me think that if you're going to adapt video games, TV might work better for it than movies. Unconcerned Salad says, Hi, Emma. Well, I'm not Emma, but I'm going to answer the question anyway. Hi, Emma. I'd like to provide some information I found interesting when I was pondering the Mario movie. First is an Iwata Asks interview on Sticker Star, where Miyamoto couldn't understand why the team wanted to add so much story to that game. The second is that in a recent IGN interview from 2023, Miyamoto explained that he doesn't think about story when making games. It's hard to know for sure, but it seems like Miyamoto's aversion to complex stories had a significant impact on the film, when considering the close collaboration Miyamoto had on this film. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts. I mean, this to me just fully backs up what I was saying in the episode, which is that, like, look, Mario is a beautifully designed thing, and it is not about the narrative. They have the barest semblance of a narrative there just to motivate you to move forward and give you a goal, but it's not, like, he's not a storyteller. He is a game designer. And that is what this is meant to be. That's the best version of it. And so, I get why they adapted it into a movie, because money, but, like, you see where Miyamoto's priorities are. This was invented to be a game, and yeah, like, Mario doesn't need to be a complex narrative. Mario is perfect as it is, as a series of video games. I'm sure Miyamoto is happy that, like, he watched the movie and he's like, look, it's all the stuff. It's like it is in the games. Look, I'm making so much money, truly, like just. My pockets are just full of cash. They're, like, overflowing, and they keep throwing more money at me. But yeah, I really doubt that he is as passionate about the Mario movie as he is about any Mario game. Riley Alexander says, Hi, Patrick. I'm a fairly recent subscriber, and I've been really enjoying your video essays. Thank you. Personally, I enjoyed the Super Mario Bros. Movie a lot. While it was full of nostalgia bait, I feel like they did a great job taking elements from the games and making them feel organic in the narrative. One aspect of the video game industry that you didn't talk about is live streaming. There is a whole community of people that love to just watch other people play video games. Granted, the player's skill and personality is a factor in why people watch them, but it still involves passively watching the game's story play out in a similar way to watching a film. I enjoy playing video games, but I'm not particularly skilled and don't often feel I have the time to play long games, so a film adaptation is a medium that is easier for me to engage with. Do you feel there is some merit in video game film adaptations to provide that more passive experience for people that get more engagement that way? This is a very interesting point, and it's one that I've seen a couple people bring up before, and I must just admit here, I'm admitting a lot of stuff in this Replies video. The last Replies video I was always apologizing. This one I'm just admitting and confessing to things. But I am, of course, as a person who makes videos on the internet, I'm of course aware of the immense popularity of video game live streams. I have friends who do it. I have been a guest on a few gaming live streams before. I have never watched one. I just have never really had the interest. Obviously, I'm not super into games as it is, but I'm just like, if I'm gonna throw on something like passively in the background, it's more likely to be a podcast than a gaming stream. But I know this is a thing that many people love. There are many extremely famous people who are famous for, for being streamers. So yeah, this is a thing that I am just fairly ignorant about, and this thing has never really appealed to me, but it clearly does for other people. I will say, so for instance, recently, just after the Mario video came out, I did a little guest appearance on my buddy Matt Kroll's stream. Matt was he was in the video. I went over to his place. We streamed Mortal Kombat. What was it? Mortal Kombat 11? Mortal Kombat 1? Anyway, we streamed a recent Mortal Kombat game. Oh, I think it was 1. Yeah, I think it was Mortal Kombat 1. But yeah, we streamed some Mortal Kombat and played that. And people watched it and, asked questions, and we chatted. And look, I had a lot of fun. I was hanging out with Matt. I was playing a video game. And I would imagine that most people watching it were watching it more for like us talking than because they really wanted to see Mortal Kombat. If you wanted to just see footage of someone playing Mortal Kombat, there's probably better ways to do that. So it seems to me like gaming streams are much more about the player and the personality than just about the game. But I'm aware, of course, that many a person has just watched like full playthroughs of games on YouTube, and there's an audience for that. And I am not part of that audience, but I do understand the appeal there. And so yeah, as much as in the episode when I criticized the Mario movie by saying this is just like watching someone else play a Mario game, there are people to whom that is appealing, and I should have acknowledged that. So yeah, I do still think the movie could have greater ambitions than just creating the experience of watching someone else play it. Because look, here you can feel free to point out where I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem to me like video game live streams are usually, great art, potentially great entertainment, but probably not great art. So look, again, I understand the appeal of the 2023 Mario. I understand the appeal of gaming live streams. I do think that the movie, could reach a little bit higher. So that's my big, long, rambly take that may not make any sense. Arnaud Latran says, "Hi, Patrick. Great video once again. I think something I would have loved to hear about from you is the implication of hiring Illumination to make the Mario movie. Illumination is, for me, a studio purely focused on the iconography, purely hired on the Mario movie as engineers to create the content Nintendo wanted. Is there any artistry which Illumination brings to the table?" Also, in the same comparison between 90s Mario and Illumination Mario is the difference between the Ron Howard Grinch and the Illumination Grinch, albeit the Illumination Grinch uses more of the classic Illumination gizmos and weird tech, which is their gimmick and mark of fabric, almost absent from the Mario movie. Okay, so yeah, Illumination. Illumination, of course, best known for the Despicable Me and Minions movies. I mean, that's so much their bread and butter that there's a minion in the Illumination logo. Illumination, as you said, they are good at iconography. I mean, I don't think even they realized quite what they had when they first put those minions on screen, that they were just going to like print billions of dollars with some of the most recognizable fictional characters now that have been created in like 25 years. They're so simple. They are like a thing that you can stamp onto anything. Infinite merchandise. And look, they are soft and round and visually appealing. And Illumination clearly, like, they play well with the brands that they are adapting. They're not gonna rock the boat. And I think that kind of thing of just like visually pleasing, a certain kind of energy that they really know how to appeal to small children and delight them. And because yeah, look, obviously they weren't going to go to Pixar. I don't even, what even is DreamWorks Animation these days? It's like, it's weird. I don't know. I feel like that might need to have too much personality. And Blue Sky, I guess, would be another option. But yeah, Illumination, it makes sense. It does make sense. It is the kind of thing where I'm like, I don't know, what if they just gone to some like anime studio and just been like, here, run wild, take Mario, just do a Mario anime. We'd all rather see that, right? This is the thing. A lot of like American studio animation is mediocre, and there'll be these movies that will make tons and tons of money because like kids watch them over and over again and drag their parents to them. And I just don't go see them. I do not watch most Illumination movies. I saw Minions because I was asked to be on a podcast about it. That's why. I was not planning on watching it myself. I'm sure there's a video to be made just about what is Illumination, as like one of the most successful animation studios in the world. But yeah, Mario movie. You know, a lot of soft, round, visually appealing things in there. Okay, that is it for the YouTube comments. And so now, very exciting part, this is where we hop on over to the questions from the Ask Patrick channel on our Discord server. For those who are new here, if this is your first Patrick Replies, the Discord server is available exclusively to members of our Patreon. So if you want to join the Patreon, it supports this channel, helps pay the team that works on the videos, and you can go to our Discord and just like chat with, me and everyone else there just about movies. It's a lovely place. And there's an Ask Patrick channel where you can submit questions, really like any question you want. If it's a question about the latest video, then I will answer it in the Patrick Replies video. And if it's just a question about anything else, like what did I have for breakfast today, or what am I drinking right here, then I will just answer it in text on Discord. And that is all. Let's jump in. Okay, our first Discord question comes from Shadow Earth Shaker. Hi Patrick, 2 questions for the adaptations video. Number 1, did you, or Brian, change the theme song for this episode a little bit so that it sounds like from a console? Yes, Brian did a full 16-bit remix of the theme song because he is brilliant. Number 2, do you think that the recent adaptations of Tomb Raider 2018, Percy Jackson, and Mario's rival Sonic the Hedgehog found a better balance on the Alice's Adventures in Wonderland spectrum of adaptation fidelity than the Mario movie, which I am not really a fan of? In the 2018 Tomb Raider, it only really copies the most memorable cutscene moments from the 2013 game, otherwise they don't have that much in common. The new Percy Jackson show does stay more faithful to the first book, but once again takes some liberties here and there, like Harry Potter. And finally, the Sonic the Hedgehog films managed to be their own thing. Sure, they got some Leo points moments here and there, but otherwise it's a whole different thing. So, once again, I must confess, I haven't seen any of these. I haven't seen the 2018 Tomb Raider, which I've generally heard is pretty solid. I also haven't played the 2013 game. I played some of the old Tomb Raider games like when I was a kid. I've heard that new game is fun, and I've heard that movie is solid. Maybe I'll give them a look at some point. I've never read or watched any version of Percy Jackson. I barely know what it's about, so I can't speak to that. And I talked about Sonic the Hedgehog in a previous question, so I'm sorry that I can't really give you a good answer, but I just haven't seen these. Salado says, hi Patrick, great video, and I found the topic very fascinating as someone who's big into both movies and games and got a few try into how adaptation works. To me, what an adaptation of a game can deliver to compensate that lack of interaction are either telling a new and interesting story into the world of a game in a way that can't be done with said games, see Arcane and how it probably won't work in a League of Legends game. I have not played League of Legends or watched Arcane, but I've heard that the show is shockingly good, and it sounds like that's kind of why. It's in the world, but doing stuff that the games could not. So yes, more things should do that. Or being a complementary piece to the game as it does different things from the game that still feel true to what those games would do, such as The Last of Us, and how the changes feel more like alternative takes or even expansion on what the games did. As I mentioned before, despite not having played the game or seen the show, that does sound like, what I understand it to be, which is good. The thing, however, with those examples is they are TV shows, not movies. So I wonder, do you think TV shows are the best way to adapt a game? You're reading my mind, because I just said that, I feel like a couple of questions ago. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not definitively saying that, but just thinking about it as I shoot this video, yeah, quite possibly. Personally, I'll say generally yes, but it's not an absolute. To stick with Nintendo, some games can be turned into movies, like Zelda, Metroid, and even Kid Icarus. I even gave a shot at that with Zelda, whereas others like Fire Emblem, F-Zero, Splatoon, and Xenoblade would fit better into TV shows because of either their narrative scope or their setting would fit better the format of TV shows. The one thing TV shows and games have in common is they're not limited by length, whereas movies usually are 2 to 3 hours. Yeah, I am still very skeptical about Zelda. I mean, the thing with Zelda is, again, Link is such a blank. He's like a total cipher. Say what you will about that 80s Zelda cartoon, but at least it did understand that Link is like not a character and you have to give him a personality. And so, I mean, that's what Zelda is. It's like, you know, you ride around, you go to one element-themed temple, you solve a bunch of puzzles, you fight a big monster, you go to a different element-themed temple, you repeat that process a handful of times, and then you fight the guy who has kidnapped the princess. And look, to be clear, I love the lore in Zelda games and the timeline of like figuring out which game is set like during what era and all of that. Like the reveal in Wind Waker that like the frozen city from Ocarina of Time is like underneath the ocean. Amazing. I love it. But you know, they are also like Mario, like their games. Look, I would love to be proven wrong, but I would also love it if they just didn't make a Zelda movie. They just left it alone. But anyway, I do think you were right that a lot of these, like, you know, if you're going to adapt them, TV might be better. Lipin says, "Hi Patrick and Emma and Jake and Nobbles and the whole crew." That's very nice. Great video as always, but I would like to hear your opinion about one more adaptation, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I don't know if you've ever played D&D, you should try it if you haven't, but you probably know that it is based on improvisation, albeit within a set of rules. The game basically is an improvisational collaborative storytelling. And even if we are talking about watching somebody else play, Critical Role, Dimension 20, or dozens of other D&D playing series, the main reason why people are watching is to see masters of improvisation and storytelling combine their skills in the best way possible. So on paper, Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves shouldn't work. It is pre-written and made by dozens and hundreds of professionals with big stacks of cheddar, not a couple of friends rolling dice, but the movie works. It creates the feel of not knowing what to do and creatively using the rules of the world around you. What do you think? Why does the D&D movie work, and what is the merit of this kind of adaptation? Thanks. The same question can be asked about Legend of Vox Machina TV show, but I doubt you've watched it. You should try, though. Okay, so first of all, correct. I have not seen Legend of Vox Machina. I don't know what it is. People can now yell at me on the internet to watch it. But I have played D&D. I'm not like an avid player, but I have played enough to be familiar with like how it feels. Most of the times that I've played, Mike, one of the writers on the channel, who's very into D&D, usually he's been the DM. But like I've played with Matt Kroll. D&D is a lot of fun. And yes, I will say that I totally agree that I think Honor Among Thieves does a really nice job of capturing like the feeling of playing. Like there's points in the movie where you can totally see that a character is basically like keeps rolling, you know, like some kind of like dexterity checks or stealth checks, and then is failing. Like the part where Chris Pine is like his face is getting all goopy, and because like whatever spell illusion thing to disguise him is failing because he like failed his stealth check, that kind of thing. The one like the paladin guy, Regé-Jean Page's character, is a classic like NPC who rolls in like when he walks away and just walks over the rock. It's funny because when they announced a D&D movie, I remember thinking about this and thinking like, because a game of D&D is so much about like you said, just the improvisational experience of a bunch of people like sitting around, rolling dice, all kind of like adding stuff, going on weird tangents, you know, like eating pizza and drinking beer or whatever. And I wondered, like, is the way to do a D&D movie to have like two levels of reality where one is just like the players at a table playing a game, and then you see like then they visualize the game that they're playing in like the fantasy world. But then I also wondered like, but then does that make the fantasy stuff irrelevant because you know there are no stakes because it's just people playing a game? But that way you at least kind of get the interplay between, you know, what they say like as the friends hang out and then what happens in the game. But yeah, to be clear, I'm not saying that that's what they should do, but I just, that's, you know, a potential idea that I thought of. But anyway, I thought the movie handled it quite nicely. And there were a bunch of times where I was like, hey, yeah, that is what it's like. Yeah, they got it. But also, I will say, and this is, and I stole this take from my friend Carmichael, but he put forth that the Fast and Furious movies are basically like a D&D game, or D&D campaign, and I think that's a really good take. He broke it all down about like how each like character is like a different class. The way it is where it's like, when The Rock enters the franchise, it's like a new character. It's like a new guy joined the campaign with a really big personality and started to like, throw off the balance. It's like when one person can't make it one week, they just like write them out of the story, but then they return in the next session, but they've got amnesia now, that kind of thing. I do love that take. The Only Alexander says, "Hi Patrick, a question for the adaptation video. My girlfriend goes a step further and says that the 2023 Mario movie isn't art. Do you think that it is art?" Wow, that is a huge question. I mean, I understand the argument, because it's like, is this Mario movie, is it not any kind of expression at all? Is it purely a commercial? Is it purely like an extension of the brand that's there to sell products, and it is not any kind of artistic statement or any kind of vision at all? I understand that perspective. And, there are a lot of ways where it is basically a commercial. I'm not gonna call any movie not art. I don't think the Mario movie is good art, but I am gonna say, like, yeah, it's, if nothing else, it is the filmmaker's perspective on and celebration of the history of the Mario games, even if that vision is extremely diluted through, the control Nintendo has over it. But yeah, not good art, but still art. DARPA says, "Hey Patrick, I was wondering if you felt like the desire for adaptation comes more from the intrinsics of a medium. Example, things film is intrinsically better at versus a novel. Or from non-intrinsic factors related to our society's thoughts and practices around the medium. My main thoughts going into this are that movies and TV seem to have a wider reach than novels or video games, so I could see someone thinking, if they make a movie, more people will experience the thing I like. As an example, I remember the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones being this weird moment where all the TV show watchers were watching the TV in shock, and all the book readers were watching the TV watchers with awe. This is an interesting idea, and I don't think the answer is one or the other. I think that both play a role. In terms of, like, I don't know, you think about, why do you want an adaptation of a thing that you like? For me, usually, if I want an adaptation, it is because of, it's usually because of the, like you put it, the intrinsics of the medium. It's like, ooh, I think I would love to see this world in live action. I would love to see a human embodiment of that character that has just been on the page and then in my head. There is that. There is also, I think, a satisfaction that comes from, oh, now because of this adaptation, it'll introduce way more people to this thing that I've always loved. I mean, that for me in the early 2000s was what was so wild when the boom of comic book movies began. And, I'd been so closeted about liking comics in middle school and high school. And then I remember how crazy it felt when, I came to school on Monday after the weekend that Spider-Man opened, and suddenly everyone was talking about Spider-Man in a way that they never, ever would have before in school. And I know it seems weird to say this now because it's such a mainstream thing. And everyone has always known who Spider-Man was, but just culturally, especially I was in 8th grade at the time, that shit was deeply uncool until the movie came along. And so, yeah, I really appreciated that, the movie changed things. So, yeah. But I will say, I think it's mostly intrinsic aspects of a medium, but non-intrinsic factors, do play something of a role. But I think those are mostly like an added benefit after the fact. Dudley says, "Hi Patrick, I wanted to ask whether you have any best and worst adaptations you feel strongly about. My feeling is that the soul of the piece is the most important thing to preserve, and precise scenes are of less importance in general, which would make Lord of the Rings a successful adaptation and Watchmen an unsuccessful adaptation. I would totally agree with both those examples. And as I already mentioned in this video, I think LA Confidential, the Curtis Hanson movie, is a really great example of what an adaptation can do, where it preserves the soul of the material while making a lot of changes to the story. Also, I did a video about this back in 2020. Greta Gerwig's Little Women, I think, is a really spectacular piece of adaptation that is in conversation with the text in such an interesting way, and I think it's just a wonderful movie. Yeah, I really love that one. In terms of worst, probably ones that I'm forgetting right now. I'm trying to think, what were really disappointing ones? I'm drawing a blank right now, which is good. I'm glad that these are not living rent-free in my head and like making me angry to this day. But, sorry. For interest's sake, friend of the channel, Brandon Sanderson, has talked about this on his podcast recently. He's currently negotiating an adaptation of his works, stalled because he doesn't care about their money and is holding out for artistic control instead. And as a creator, the artistic point of an adaptation is to present it in a new form for people who don't want to experience it in the current form. He considers the unknowing viewers to be more important than the knowing ones, and changing plot, characters, scenes, etc. to be able to tell the same story in the new medium is a feature and not a bug. I totally agree. Brandon, smart guy. And I love that he watches this channel. Perry Williams says, "Hey Patrick and Emma, was wondering, video game TV, I've watched the Halo show and planning to watch the Fallout series, so what's your thoughts on them? Could this be something new for television and streaming?" So I mentioned this in the Who's Killing Cinema video, but it is crazy to me that after years of trying to make a Halo movie that, was widely reported on, a lot of big people involved, they finally made the show, and it was a really, really expensive show. And I've never met a person who watched it, and I've never heard anyone talk about it. I did, after I mentioned that in the video, a couple people in the Replies video were like, I watched the Halo show. But basically that show, I think, made very little impact, and it's not one that I have watched. But apparently season 2 is coming out. I will say, with Fallout, I've never played the games. Again, I haven't played most of these games. But I hear the show is pretty good. People seem to dig it, and I might watch that. I've also heard, from people who are familiar with the game, that it's like a good adaptation that does, in various ways, like capture the feeling and experience of playing the game. So I can't speak to that. All I can do is repeat what I've heard other people say. But yeah. Again, I feel like the more of these comments that come in, the more we're leaning toward, maybe TV is a better place to adapt video games. These long narratives. Crantastic says, "Hello, Patrick. I have 2 separate questions related to the adaptation essay. For One Night in Miami and the Kenneth Branagh version of Sleuth, I saw a few film critics harp on those movies for seeming too much like a stage play and not enough like a film, which always struck me as an odd criticism considering they are literally stage play adaptations and those stories in particular are essentially just a bunch of people in a room talking. What are your thoughts on that line of criticism?" So I have not seen either of these. Why did I never get around to seeing One Night in Miami? I heard good things about it. I don't know. I mean, I will say, when you're making a film, I think it is important to an extent to take advantage of the new medium. And if you're taking a play and putting it on screen, at least do something unique visually that adds something to what was already there, so it just doesn't seem redundant, because there are just filmed versions of plays, and so you gotta justify why are you doing this and not just filming the stage production. But yeah, I mean, I do feel like I have had this thought before where something seems too much like a play. This is not a criticism I have, but you know, like Reservoir Dogs is really a lot like a play. That's a movie that honestly I'm surprised was not ever a play, because it's all kind of right there. But yeah, I can't speak to these examples that you brought up, but you know, I do think it can be a fair criticism. Not that being like a play is bad, but just, you know, not doing enough to justify the adaptation, I think, is valid. You brought up video game adaptations as possibly the next big thing Hollywood will be chasing, but I've seen some commenters saying that live-action remakes of anime/anime-esque properties as another contender, especially since it seems to parallel the history of video game adaptations. The Last Airbender, Ghost in the Shell, and the Cowboy Bebop Netflix series being the Super Mario Bros. 93 size stumblings at the beginning, but the more recent adaptations like One Piece and the newer Avatar: The Last Airbender, and your beloved Alita Battle Angel seeming to be on the uptick in quality and fidelity. With adapting an animated work, however, do you see any kind of point in making it live action? Now this is a real question, adapting animated stuff to live action. Because yeah, I remember when the Cowboy Bebop show was coming out, and I was just always like, what's the point? Why, like, what can it add that isn't already in the show? And like, I remember when they released just like the title sequence before the show was even out, there was like, here's the title sequence. We redid it exactly, like shot for shot in live action. And I was like, it's like a stiffer version of the same thing. It's just worse. So yeah, a lot of these, you know, often seem pointless to me. I will say something like Alita Battle Angel is interesting because I don't know if that was ever turned into an anime, but, you know, it's based on a manga. And so that is more like comic to film adaptation. And also so much of Alita is animated, like the action scenes, that you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. It's not like the Cowboy Bebop thing where you're just kind of having live action stuff more stiffly imitate animation. Well, granted, I haven't watched the original Avatar: The Last Airbender. Sorry, everybody. I will one day. But yeah, I don't really get what the point of putting that in live action is. That said, you know, there's been talk about, they've been trying to make that live action Akira for so long, it's a bad idea. But I mean, like, look, Speed Racer is one of my favorite movies. And I think that really successfully manages to take a very simple animated show and kind of like retain the simplicity of it while also making it far more visually ambitious and interesting than the animated show could ever be. And I'm like, look, that's the thing. Speed Racer is so good that, you know, any of these could be great. It's all possible. I'm not going to dismiss anything because a Speed Racer live action movie does seem like a bad idea. But yeah, I have a feeling we'll get a bunch of these things where, like, look, I know some people like the One Piece show. I've never watched it. And I know some people like the live action, you know, Last Airbender. But yeah, I don't know. These all strike me as just similar looking Netflix shows that are just going to kind of disappear into just the ocean of content and are not going to, like, you know, be talked about a couple of years from now. I could be wrong. But yeah, they will definitely try to make a bunch of these because they're just, you know, IP that have fan bases. But, you know, we'll see how many great ones we get. That's the thing. It's like trying to be the next, like, you know, comic book adaptation. Like, Iron Man was a huge hit and, like, incredibly popular. Avengers was like a cultural phenomenon. So we'll see if any of these can pull off something like that. Like, I like Alita quite a bit. It's a crazy movie. It was not a huge hit. Like, there's no sequel on the way. I'd love a sequel. Don't get me wrong. But It's not like they're, doing a whole cinematic universe based on that. So we'll see. All right, Trusher says, watching the adaptation video, I started to think about adaptation as validation. Cinema is an established, prestigious medium, both critically acclaimed and commercially successful, while video games are a younger medium, commonly dismissed a couple decades ago as infantile. It feels like a couple decades ago, part of why some video game fans wanted to see games adapted into movies was the acceptance that the stories and worlds of video games were good enough to be adapted into a more prestigious medium. I think this is much less true now, as video games are more established as a medium and more accepted as art. This does lead into the discussion of video games emulating movies, something I am interested in hearing more from you in a future video. So yes, I think what you were saying there about the validation is completely true. I mean, that's how I felt about, comic books, where I was like, no one takes these things that I like seriously, but people are gonna, watch the movies, and maybe the movies will give us that cultural validation, and then people will take the comics seriously. So yeah, I think that is completely true. And as far as the issue of, video games emulating movies, that is a topic for a future video. I don't know when, but in the future. Lord Hermes says, more of a comment than a question, but something I've noticed when it comes to adaptations is that the medium the work is being adapted into is usually treated as more legitimate than the original one. Live action is more legitimate than animation, is more legitimate than comics/manga. Actually, books seem to be the exception to this rule, but they are much older than any of the other mediums. I see this most prominently in the manga to anime pipeline, where most fans will see a cool moment in a manga and say, I can't wait to see this animated. I understand why they say this, but it makes me sad to see it treated as a blueprint and not a standalone work of art. Yes, I totally agree. There's actually, in one of the sections that I cut out from the original script for the adaptations video, I did talk about this idea where, it's weird how culturally live action movies are kind of treated as the ultimate version of any story. And you can see that most obviously in the way that Disney is just we are not content to simply have beloved, classic, hugely popular animated films. It's not done until we remake it with real people and really flat, gray cinematography and a lot of CGI sludge. But yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid that we have that idea because sometimes it is cool to see a thing come to life. Sometimes it is cool to see a still panel move, and then sometimes that happens, and you go, oh well, yeah, but it's not as good as the original thing. So yeah. It's an annoying but pervasive idea that I don't know if it will ever go away. Finn Delamata May says, okay, regarding the adaptations video, number one big appeal of movie adaptations of video games that I'm surprised you didn't bring up was the social element. While some games have multiplayer options, I think it's fair to say that video games overall are more a medium for individual experiences than group ones. Having a video game adapted into a movie gives you a chance to experience it with your friends collectively. My brother went to see the Five Nights at Freddy's movie with all his friends, not because they thought it would be good, they actually all thought it would be terrible, but because it was a chance for them to experience it as a friend group for the first time. I'm not actually sure how big a thing this is, especially how big it is for motivating adaptations or why people want adaptations. Because what you're describing here sounds similar to just groups of friends going to see any big movie. I don't think that's unique to video game movies. I think that the same thing happens for a Marvel movie or Barbie and stuff like that. It's I'm gonna push back a little bit. I don't think that the social element plays a huge role. I don't think people are I want to see a Mario movie so that I can experience Mario with my friends. I don't know. People can still hang out and play a single-player video game before. I used to do that when I was a kid. My friends and I would get together and we'd kind of like, when one person would die, then we'd like trade off and the next person would play. And so, you know, I don't know. That's just me. Okay, and number 2 is, what's the point of going to be a new series like Blue Flame Special or Patrick Explains? I mean, probably not, but I'd definitely be up for that. Well, at the time of shooting this video, we have announced the next episode after the Jaws one, and it is another What's the Point of? But also I changed the title of the Mario episode so it's no longer What's the Point of, but I don't know. Maybe if the videos perform better, it could be a title format that I bring back more, but I thought the Mario video would do better, and so I changed the title, and it still didn't really do better, so I don't know. Naki Rendall says, I just got into a long discussion with my wife where I felt like an old man shaking my fist at the clouds. Back in my day, we used to read about video game news and stay connected on specific creators who were big as hell. Nowadays, kids just play Fortnite or Minecraft and don't care about widening their scope. Ugh. This spread into the fact that video game developers have been veering into live-action shows, such as The Last of Us and Fallout. I feel embittered that video games are so damn hard and expensive to make that good creatives are being pushed to pursue easier or just more enjoyable artistic expressions. Is my concern just another of Grandpa didn't take his meds, ignore his ramblings type of anger, or can you appreciate my embittered soul? I honestly don't know, because the thing is, even back when I was like playing video games and following them, I was never really so into them that I like knew who the directors and developers were. Like outside of Kojima, I was not following like the creative individuals behind video games. And if I wasn't, and like knowing how I am with like movies and comics and stuff, I kind of doubt that most other people were. I think you may have just been like more passionate a fan who like really did know who like the behind the scenes people were. So I'm honestly not sure things have changed all that much. Although, except for the fact that video games are now are more time consuming and expensive to make because, you know, they've got to be enormous and like the graphics have to be like photorealistic, and it's crazy. I don't know how they make those things. Oh, and this is our last question. Ram Secundus says, after we'd watched the adaptation video, I was chatting with a friend, comic/film critic Ari Barge, to give proper attribution, and he had a question about another kind of adaptation that I think you'd find interesting. The adaptation that sits exactly in the middle of the Mario spectrum, and so is ultimately concerned neither with fidelity nor any kind of original purpose. He recounted this experience to me. More often than not, a scenario will play out like this. I'll be watching a film, and 70 to 80% through the movie, I'll notice a line or scene that doesn't feel right. It'll feel fake, where the movie had previously felt earnest. So I'll look up the movie, and it'll be based on a play or a work of literature, except that it will have excised large chunks of the original work for seemingly no apparent reason. Two of the more recent examples are the Korean film My Name is Lo Ki-won on Netflix and Sometimes I Think About Dying. The former changes the entire framing device and perspective of the novelette it was based on and fills it with a hollow romance that may just be more marketable, while the latter adapts one act of a two-act play where the two acts are in essential conversation with each other. His question, why do you think these sort of empty adaptations of obscure works are getting made, where there's no pre-existing fan base to build on, and the director doesn't seem to care about the source material one way or another? Is it that the work is already there, so it's easy? I'll add to this that this kind of bafflingly unfaithful adaptation can sometimes result in a good movie. Under the Skin is widely loved, but it's still extremely weird that it's an adaptation of a silly sci-fi satire about aliens who built a factory farm of humans rather than an original script. Why make an extremely unfaithful adaptation of an obscure work instead of just something original without those rights? So, my theory here, especially if this is an obscure work, is that the filmmaker, the writer, whoever decides to adapt this, because this is clearly not a case of like a studio like buying up an IP that is going to be lucrative because this thing is obscure and most people haven't heard of it. I think it's the case of like, the filmmaker, the writer, seeing or reading this original thing and some aspect of it resonating with them, where they're like, I want to, like, I really connect with this. I have some desire to tell the story, to like use an element of this and to reinterpret it in some way. And I think because it is fairly obscure, they know like there's not a giant fan base that's gonna come at me. This is not quite a perfect one-to-one, but you look at The Shining and like, that movie is not interested in like the core themes that like Stephen King was writing about, but that book like sparked something for Stanley Kubrick that, where he still had, most of the plot, but kind of went off in different directions. And yeah, I think that's it. Sometimes, maybe this person's watching a play and they're just like, the first half of this play, like, I really relate to it, really means a lot to me. I want to like reinterpret it in some way and just kind of, leave the second act alone. I don't like, we're talking about the motivation of people that I'm not talking to, and so I don't know exactly, but I would say I think that's it, or at least part of it. Okay, and now my favorite part, where I got to open the physical mail. So, physical mail, we've got multiple things here today. Let's start with the letters. Okay. Oh, wow. Here's a letter. Time sensitive. Uh-oh. Zach, I am so sorry. You mailed this from Brooklyn, where I am, and apparently you mailed it on February 6th. It is more than 2 months later. How am I only getting this now? Okay. So, well, I'm very sorry. This is, Zach also lives in Brooklyn, where I live, and he invited me to a murder mystery party on March 2nd. Well, this all looks fun. So yeah, Zach, I'm very sorry that I just opened this more than 2 months late. I'm a fool, but thank you for inviting me to your party. I hope the murder mystery party was a lot of fun. He does say here, P.S., have you seen Fighter 2024? It's great. Indian movie. I have not seen Fighter. P.P.S. No need to read this on video unless you want to. That's fine too, but it is not the point of this letter. Well, I have read it on video, and Zach, I am so sorry that I do not check my P.O. box often enough. That one is on me. Although weirdly, why wasn't this letter there when I checked the P.O. box for the Vito's reply video? Because I shot that well after you had said, I don't know what the deal. I blame my post office. Okay, what do we got here now? Ooh, we got a letter from the UK. Okay, this is from Ryan Doherty. Dear Patrick, since I began to watch your channel around 6 months ago, I have been both thoroughly informed and entertained by your videos. The videos are very well made, and the effort put into them really shines through. Anyway, I was wondering if, for the next block of videos you write, that you could perhaps do one or a section on the following. The differences in how and what films are approved and funded in the US compared to Europe. I have been wondering why the types of films created and released in nations such as France are so different to ones from major American studios, and I feel this could be a good topic for a video. I'm sorry if writing to you about a topic suggestion can come across as being rude. Don't worry about it. Anyways, whatever you create for your next block of videos, I am sure that they will be made to the high standards of what you have created before or surpass them in quality. Thank you so much, that's so nice. Also, please send a huge thanks to everyone who assists you with your channel. They have done amazing work. I agree, they are terrific. What you're suggesting there sounds genuinely like a very interesting topic. I will say it does sound like an enormous project to basically research like everything that various European countries produces, because, you know, there's a French film industry, there's a UK film industry. Every country in Europe is producing movies, and looking at like the entirety, like the full scope of what Europe produces is, I feel like we need to find like a more focused angle on this. Otherwise, it would destroy me. But thank you for the suggestion. Okay to open on air. Well, there you have it. All right. Okay. Ooh, what do we got here? Okay. Patrick H. Willems. Hi, love your channel, and since I just returned from a visit to Japan, I thought you would enjoy this postcard from the Ghibli Museum. Or Ghibli, it's probably Ghibli and I'm just wrong. I really want to egg you on to making the Japan video. Being in Tokyo for a week, my word. Ghibli, Nintendo, Disney, every pop culture thing is literally everywhere. I would love to see you be bombarded by it, much like your Bollywood India video. Plus, the food in Japan is pretty damn good. Thanks, bye. Kevin from Colorado. God, this is beautiful. It is postcard. The city from Kiki's Delivery Service. My favorite, most beloved fictional location of all time. Ah, it's so nice. Thank you so much, Kevin. I would love to do that Japan video where I go to Japan and, you know, learn about Japanese cinema. It would also be expensive. And I'd probably need to bring someone with me to help film. So, I don't know, you know, the Patreon, just convince, like, you know, 1,000 more people or so to join the Patreon, and then I can make it. That's easy. You know, everyone watching this, look here. This video is gonna be watched by like at least 20,000 people. Everyone tell one person to join the Patreon. Or wait, no. Just join the Patreon at like the lowest tier, and then I can make the video. It's that simple. That'll do it. Like, you know, I'm not pressuring anyone into giving me money, but I am just saying that if, you know, that would allow me to make the video. These videos are expensive to make, even the normal ones. You know, we gotta pay people. Okay. Ripping this open. Okay. So. Okay, let's see. We have a letter here. Hello, Patrick, and also Emma. I love when people say hello to Emma. It's great. Thank you for your videos. I have been a big fan of your analysis of media for years now and always look forward to your new releases. I often recommend these to my friends. As a film connoisseur and production professional, I learn from, am entertained by, and relate to your work. Thank you. You, as well as others online, inspire me to look at popular culture at a deeper level. As a token of my thanks, I wanted to send you a signed copy of a project that I have been working on for nearly a decade. This is a card game that I made called Continuity, the Game of Fictional Timelines. There it is. Ooh. In it, players work to place over 300 well-known events from movies, television, books, and more in the order that they happen. I hope you can enjoy this game with friends and family. I even included the promo card. Throughout the process of development, I've been able to see how authors/creators visualize time and how fiction connects to each other. I appreciate you showing me and so many others that content can be enjoyed at a deeper level. Benson Farris. This is so nice. This is also, you made a card game? That is very impressive. This is like just like really nicely designed. Ooh, look at this. Ooh. Look at, oh, wow. Oh man, look at all these cards. Look at that. This is great. Benson, thank you so much. Hey. That's awesome. This rules. Thank you so much, dude. This is really lovely. I'm excited to try this out. Okay. So in that case, that does it for this episode. I just checked, and we have not been filming for a full 2 hours. I'm gonna hand this off to Emma, and she can cut it down, and hopefully it will be manageable. Anyway, man, these replies videos, a lot of stuff to reply to. Yeah, I don't think the Jaws one is gonna be as long. Yeah, we'll be fine. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for sending in such lovely, thoughtful comments and questions, except for the shiny head guy. Good night.